Gov Hutchinson is the Assistant General Counsel and Staff Vice President of the California Association of Realtors. He has been with CAR since 1985 and manages CAR's Members Legal Service Program in Los Angeles. Gov advises realtors through the hotline and on all aspects of real estate law and trains and supervises other hotline attorneys. Received his bachelor's degree in history from Princeton University and a doctorate from the University of Pennsylvania. Gov has written for California Real Estate Magazine, co-author CAR's continuing education courses, and is a master instructor for the Education Division of CAR with certifications from the Department of Real Estate. He also a regular speaker to the association's boards of realtors, affiliate trade associations, city and county bar associations, and major real estate firm. He is also a member of the Real Property Law Section of America, California, and the Los Angeles County Bar Association. Please give him a warm welcome, Gov Hutchinson.
Thank you very much. It is good to be here. You know what I always notice about going to Bakersfield? You guys dress well. I appreciate it. I see men in ties. Usually I don't see men in ties when I give these presentations. And also, I have to tell you this, and I definitely don't say this everywhere. This might be the nicest building in the entire state for realtors. And this is... I'm trying to think of a nicer one, and I really can't think of one. So, good to be here. And I think I've done about 150 of these this year. So, all over the place. And a lot of places, they still think I'm the former governor of California. I don't get that. Realtors come up to me, serious look on their face. When were you governor again? And they're not kidding. So anyway, no. I'm not. Makes you wonder, yes. Makes you wonder about a lot of things. Yes. Gov is not short for anything. Thank you. It's G-O-V, no period, no abbreviation. That's it. No one believes it, but that's it. So when people just send me things Gov period, I don't even object anymore. It's just there. If you want to call me governor, that's okay too. I have no problem with that. Okay, so as you know, my main job is the legal hotline, busier than ever, which is good. Let me tell you first a couple of the brand new things from the legal hotline, and you may not have noticed for free for you. One of them is, you know, when you call the legal hotline, a lot of times you're calling maybe on behalf of your client or yourself, but you have a problem with the other side. Does this ever happen to you? Like you're the buyer's agent and it's the other one who's a problem, or you're the seller's agent, the other, or the other client's a problem, or the tenant's a problem, or just the other agent's a problem. You know, they're not presenting your offer, they're not responding, they're not closing, they're missing a deadline, whatever it is they're not doing. You know, you call us up on the hotline and say, you know, I did this and they did this. Aren't they supposed to do that? Am I right or are they right? And usually we say, you're right. They're wrong. In fact, you're good and they're evil. And then the realtor says, yeah, that's great. What do I do? We say, you should tell them, you know, maybe in writing, write them a letter or something that says, you know, I did this, you're supposed to do this. According to this rule, this law, this paragraph, you have to do this. And then the caller says, that's a great idea. Could you write that letter? And we say, no. But did you know we have a library of these letters now on zip form for free on a separate library called Sample Legal Letters? All the common scenarios that we get all day long on the hotline of the other side not doing what they should be doing. And it's worded like an attorney would write it because we wrote it. You know, it's got the citations to the right thing. And I mean, obviously, when we're talking to you on the hotline, we'll refer you to it, but you can just go directly to that library without even calling the hotline if you ever want to, okay? Second new thing from the hotline is a small claims court assistance manual. God forbid you ever have to go to small claims court. Maybe it's a commission issue, a deposit issue, something like that, you or your client. We got all the standard scenarios we hear on the hotline all the time, and just like, here's a good opening argument. These are which documents you should bring with you. These are which the other side's probably going to say, and this is what you should probably say to respond to them. So check that out too. That's not on zip form. That's at car.org on the legal page. There's a link to this. It's password protected for realtors only. Small Claims Court Assistance Manual. Okay? All right. So why am I here? I'm here to update you. What am I going to update you on? All the new stuff. Laws, forms, cases. And this is the perfect time to come. You know, everyone wants me to come in November. I only go to select places in November, like Bakersfield, all right? because you guys have got me in the November habit for a long time now. Okay, so forms and laws are what happened late October, early November. Before I even talk about that, though, let's talk about the latest from the Department of Real Estate. Oh, it's not the Department of Real Estate anymore, is it? It's the Bureau of Real Estate. Okay, so it's the BRE, right? No, it's not the BRE. It's Cal BRE. How many of you already put on your business cards BRE? Throw them out. No, you can use them, but the official acronym you have to use eventually is capital C, small a, small l, capital BRE. Cal BRE. What's wrong with BRE, you're saying? Because somebody trademarked BRE. So they can't call themselves the BRE. Now, seriously, if you've already put on your license, on your business cards, BRE license number, you're not going to get punished. But eventually, transition to Cal BRE. We had to change all our forms on zip form twice already, to BRE number and then Cal BRE. Because there is a grace period. How long is this grace period going to last? Nobody knows. One day you'll be in violation, so start thinking about that, okay? Two things from the latest from the BRE that you should know about. One of them is fairly significant, and you'll hear a lot more about this. Okay, so when you're a realtor and you're doing a transaction, you generate paperwork, you generate contracts, offers and counteroffers, listing agreements, advertising, and you create a file, and you're supposed to keep this stuff, right? How long do you have to keep it? 3 years. People ask me all the time, should I keep it longer? I say, is it a good file or a bad file? If it's a bad file, burn it on the 3rd anniversary. If it's a good file, you keep it forever because it's going to protect you. Okay. Well, the point is, the Cal BRE has figured out, as you all have figured out, that you do so many things electronically now. You send emails and text messages and tweets and post things on Facebook related to the transaction. Like you email your client, hey, the buyer will raise their offer $10,000, something like that. Well, the BRE has figured out that these are, by courts, these are considered to be documents, which means they fall in the category of the documents you have to keep for 3 years. You got to start keeping your electronic communications. Which ones? I mean, what if I text my client, I'll meet you for lunch in an hour? I mean, obviously, probably not, right? So we're meeting with Cal BRE over the last couple of weeks to get some more specific guidelines, and also because another thing that Cal BRE says is every broker in California should have some type of written policy in your office that instructs the agents what the rules are as far as which electronic communications you keep and where you send them, so there's a central place where they're kept. So we're going to come up with a sample policy that you can all use, and hopefully some guidelines from BRE. But you got to start thinking about this right now. You really have to start getting into the mindset of keeping significant electronic communications. Think of anything that I'm doing as sort of licensed activity. I mean, helping someone negotiate, that's licensed activity. So if it's related to that, it's something you're going to keep, right? Anyway, so that's one thing. More to come very soon. Second thing is the concept of team names. Kind of interesting. Let's say I, Gov Hutchinson, worked for a real estate company in Bakersfield, ABC Realty. Could I put on my signs, Gov Hutchinson at ABC Realty? Of course I could. Do I got to get a DBA for that? No, my name is not I can use my name. Okay. But what if I worked for ABC Realty as a team? I got the Hutchinson team. I got a few agents who work with me. I'm the head of the team, and we got this team. Am I allowed to put on my business cards and my for sale signs listed by the Hutchinson team at ABC Realty? The answer is no, even though everybody does it. Well, okay, why not? Because the BRE says that's a fictitious name, you got to get a DBA. Okay, I'll go get a DBA. Up until very recently, they wouldn't give you a DBA with a team name because it has an agent's name and not the broker's name. Now they've changed policy. So every broker in the room, you can go get a DBA for any team under your brokerage that wants to put on the sign listed by the Hutchinson team or something. You wouldn't have to put all the names of the agents. So that's the good news. Here's the bad news. It's kind of weird. It says, if you do this, if you start putting like team names on for sale signs, you also have to put on the sign the broker's individual name and BRE license number. Have you ever seen a license number on a for sale sign? No, of course not. That's not what you do. So we can't figure that one out. So we're also talking to BRE about that, to get that. I mean, it's good that you can legally do team names, but why should you have to go to that extra step that you don't have to do normally just because it's a team name? It should be okay. Anyway, so that's the latest, okay? That's the latest from the BRE. Maybe one more thing while I'm talking about it. You ever hear about a new law that you say to yourself, wow, I already thought that was the law? Does this ever happen, right? Here's a perfect one. There's a new law that just got signed that says it is illegal for realtors to tamper with or mutilate your records. In other words, you're about to get audited. I better fix these records so they look good. Didn't you think that was already illegal? Wouldn't you have already thought that was bad? Apparently it was okay before. Up until now, it was okay to tamper with your records in anticipation of getting audited. They had to go to the trouble of a new law, okay? All right. So, how many laws did the governor sign this year? Anybody know? Thousands. How many do we think had something to do with real estate? 130. Where do I find these 130? If you go to car.org, you go to legal, there's a little tab for 2014 new laws. How many of these new laws am I about to tell you? 5 or 6. Okay. There are not that many crucial new laws that got passed this year. But there are a few, so I'll mention them. And then also mention all the new forms, too. Okay? By the way, I mean, there's just not a lot of significance in the new laws this year. But my favorite new law this year has nothing to do with real estate. But I think you'll think it's interesting, too. Because I drive around the whole state, you know, and I'm always looking for parking. And because I'm always running late. And thank you very much for giving me a parking space today. I really appreciate that. So I'm driving down the street wherever I am, San Francisco, anywhere, and I'm looking for a parking space, and you find a meter. It's a metered spot, but it's vacant, so you park there, and then the meter's not working. It won't take your money. Do you know some cities, if you park in that meter, even though the meter isn't working and won't take your money, they'll give you a ticket? I always thought that was so wrong. There's a new law that says they can't do that. All right. Every city in California, if the meter's not working, you park there, they can't give you a ticket. We're going to see a lot of broken meters, I think. But, you know, you stick a little thing in that thing so it can't take money, and then, hey, it's broken. What can I do? So that's my favorite new law of the year. All right. Real estate laws. Let's talk about the most boring laws first. And there's one brand new one that no one's heard about that you're going to be pretty much one of the very first to hear. Okay, my first topic will be, and I'll get over this, is the whole short sale foreclosure tax issues, okay? And I basically have good news, almost completely. So that's good. First question is, if you owe the bank $250,000, but the house is only worth $200,000, right? And they foreclose on you, and they get the house worth $200,000 even though you owed them $250,000. Following a foreclosure, can a bank sue you for the extra $50,000? No, because we got this thing in California called the anti-deficiency laws, which means that they do a normal foreclosure against you, all they get is the house. They can't sue you for the extra money. Okay. But did you know that only applies if you do a regular foreclosure, which is a notice of default, notice of sale? Do you know lenders have the option of doing something called a judicial foreclosure, where they can hire a lawyer, file a lawsuit, and go that way? Only 1% of all foreclosures in California are judicial. But did you know following a judicial foreclosure, the lender can sue you for the entire amount you owe them, even if it's more than the value of the house? Unless it's a purchase money loan. If it's a purchase money loan, even if they do a judicial foreclosure, they can't touch you. Okay, but a lot of us, like me, have refinanced our original loan, so it's no longer a purchase money loan. Here's a new law. It says, if it was originally purchase money and you refinance it, it's still purchase money. Unless you took extra money out. But that means only the lender could, if they went to the trouble of doing a judicial foreclosure, they could only go after that extra money. So that's a big deal. People, you don't have to worry about when you refinance anymore that you're going to lose your protection from the anti-deficiency law. So that's good law number one. Good law number two. Have you ever heard of this? This is going to shock you. But imagine this. Actually, you won't be that shocked. A lender forecloses on you, so they know they can't sue you for any more money. But they hope you don't know. They hope you don't know the law, so the remaining debt, they sell it to a collection agency, and the collection agency starts calling people up, hey, you still owe us $50,000. They know that if they sued you, they wouldn't win because of these anti-deficiency laws, but they hope you don't know. So they start harassing you, and hopefully you'll give them some money. Can you believe this? Are you shocked that that's a... No, you're not shocked at all. You'll be happy to know there's a new law that says they can't do that. You can't even try to collect a debt that you couldn't enforce if you sued them. So that's good news. All right, so that's two good news ones. Here's another good news one. Let's talk about a short sale. Same number. You owe the bank $250, house is worth $200. You do a short sale at $200. Following a short sale, can the bank go after you for the extra $50? The answer used to be yes, but now the answer is, remember the law got passed a couple years ago that says following a short sale, lender, all they get is the property, the amount of the sale of the property. They can't get anything extra. Does anyone remember when that law was signed? 2011. So here's the question. If I did a short sale prior to 2011, am I still protected? In other words, was that law retroactive? There was a court case this last year. You know what they said? It is retroactive for purchase money loans. So if any of you or your clients did a short sale prior to 2011, even prior to that law being signed, the lender still can't go after you. So that's good news too, as long as it's a purchase money loan. I'm full of good news today. Why aren't you smiling? And here's the last one. Okay, the tax issue. A lender let's say a lender does a foreclosure on you. You owe them $250, house is worth $200, they foreclose. All they get's the house. We all know that. Well, that extra $50 they can't go after you for. Do you get taxed on that extra $50 following a foreclosure? No, you don't even get taxed, as long as it's a purchase money loan. So even if it's a purchase, so in other words, you don't get taxed and they can't go after you. Well, that's all good. But what about a short sale? What if you do a short sale, the lender can't touch you? Do you get taxed on as debt forgiveness for the amount of money forgiven in the short sale? The answer used to be yes, but then there was this temporary law, right? The temporary law says as long as it's your primary residence, even if you do a short sale, you don't have to pay tax. When does that law expire? End of this year. When did the state version of that law expire? Last year. So anybody who closed a short sale this year in California, you got to pay state tax, unless you're in bankruptcy or insolvency. And if you do a short sale next year, you got to pay federal and state tax. Why is this bad? Because this is going to cause people to say, I'll just let it go to foreclosure, which is bad for realtors because you don't make money on foreclosure, you make money on a short sale. You ready for the good news? And this is like not even public, so don't tell anybody. But whatever you think of her normally, Senator Barbara Boxer has talked to the IRS. And the IRS is going to come out with an IRS letter ruling of some kind that's going to say, you know, we don't need a law. Just by definition, cancellation of debt income on a short sale should not be taxed. The only reason we haven't put it out from CAR yet is because we're going to let Boxer's office get the credit of putting out a press release, which is going to happen any day now. As soon as the IRS puts this in writing, that basically says we don't need any more legislation. Just by definition, debt forgiveness on a short sale is not taxable income, which of course means you don't need to extend that federal law beyond this year. It's going to be permanent, which leads us to California, though. So we hope when the IRS says officially, we do not consider this income, we're hoping the Franchise Tax Board will agree. And I think they just might. Some of you have been following politics. You know this whole thing with SB 30 this year? Some of you know what I'm talking about. That was the bill that in California that for really ugly political reasons, they wouldn't allow come to a vote that would have extended the California don't have to pay tax on a short sale thing. I don't think we're going to, on the federal level, we're not going to need. On the state, we're very optimistic. If the IRS says this, so don't be telling anybody, because no, you can if you want. But because it hasn't happened yet, but you know, this looks very good. This will be big. And why is Senator Boxer doing this? Because CAR has been talking to them. It didn't just happen. This is why when your political people say contribute, you contribute. So we can bribe, I mean contribute to these politicians, you know, and make sure they do the right thing, okay? So that's good news, yes. Loan modifications too, absolutely. Same thing. By definition, you're not going to pay tax. Ladies first, yes. At this point, yes. We're just talking primary residence, but it may get even better than that. Maybe the IRS will make it even more general than that, and because the reasoning is, if a foreclosure doesn't do it, why should a short sale? Why should they be? They should automatically be treated. If under IRS law a foreclosure is not considered cancellation of debt on a non-recourse loan, why should it be any different for a short sale? Why do we even need legislation? It should be the same philosophy. The philosophy is if the lender can't sue you for it, then they really haven't forgiven anything because they couldn't have sued you anyway. They're not being generous to you. The law says they can't sue you. It's a non-recourse loan. Why should it be any different on a short sale or a foreclosure? So this is good news. Stay tuned. All right? Okay. Any more questions on just that topic? Yes? We're hoping it's going to be quite broad. His question is, he says, normally letter rulings only apply to one circumstance. I think I'm misleading. I'm not using the right terminology. It's not going to be I know what you mean by an official letter ruling. I think it's going to be in the form of a letter, but it's going to have the power of general application. Because obviously a letter ruling applying to one transaction wouldn't be a good, not what we need. So like I said, I was almost not going to mention it today, but what the heck? You should know before anybody. Bakersfield now knows before anybody else. All right, so, because we just found out like yesterday. So, and like I said, the only reason we didn't put out an email is because it's not official yet. Well, the question is, some of you don't know what she's talking about, but the whole problem this past year is there's a bill called SB 30, CAR sponsored, that every single senator in the state was for, Democrat and Republican, that would have extended this. But then the Senate leadership said, well, there's this other bill that nobody likes that is going to increase recording taxes. So they, in a form of extortion, they say, CAR, we're not going to, you know, we're not going to allow SB 30 to come to a vote unless you remove your opposition to SB 391. And CAR, you guys, to your eternal credit, refused to back down and say, we're not, these are two different things. We're not going to change our policy on this thing because of this thing. So they said we're not going to let it come to a vote. Well, like I said, if this happens and the Franchise Tax Board agrees, we don't need SB 30. So you're still opposed to 391. 391 is not going to pass either. You've killed 391. So it's all good. All right. Good news. All good news. What else is going on? What other laws are worth talking about? Is there anything new in disclosure? There's always something new in disclosure. This is not a big deal this year at all. You ready for this? There's going to be one more question on the TDS. And it's not going to happen till July, so you don't, if you see it now, it hasn't changed. One last question for the seller is going to be basically asking the seller, are you involved in any, more or less, it's not going to say this exactly, but what it's going to mean is, are you involved in any dispute with the builder? I mean, there's always been a question that says, are you currently involved in any litigation involving this property? But sometimes if you buy a brand new house, and then a few years later there's something wrong with it, you can't, you know the law says you're not allowed to sue the builder until you first give the builder a chance to fix the problem. So maybe you're in that situation. You're in that whole process of working with the builder, and now you're selling the house. Well, you're not in litigation, so you wouldn't say to the buyer, I'm in litigation. So they figure they need a new question to say, well, you're involved in any type of pre-litigation with the builder. You get what I'm saying? So it's, I mean, I think buyers want to know that. They don't just want to know if you're in lawsuit. They want to know, are you sort of in that, do you have a problem with the builder? We need to know that. So that's the only new thing coming on the TDS. And that's not happening till July. Okay? All right. What else is going on? Did you hear, do you remember last year? I don't remember last year either, but do you remember last year? I told you that there was this new law that said If you're a realtor doing property management and your client says, hey, go hire a roofer to fix the roof, and you, the realtor, hire the contractor and schedule the contractor and pay the contractor, that you, the realtor, had to get a contractor's license. Anybody remember that? Some of you do. Well, that's good news. That's not true. Since then, the Contractors Licensing Board has officially come out and says that's not what the law says. It may look like that, but it's not what it means. Realtors do not need to be contractors, even if you do property management, even if you hire the subs. I mean, even if you hire the contractor, but don't hire the subs. That's where they draw the line. If the realtor hires the subcontractors, you're taking too much responsibility for this work, and you need a contractor's license. And don't tell the contractor how to do their job either, basically. You can hire the contractor, let them in, schedule them, observe the work, answer questions, but don't hire the subcontractors, and don't be the one who tells them how to do their job. And then you don't need a contractor's license, okay? So they solve that problem. Speaking of rentals, I'll talk about a couple other things. Did you hear about this really good case where a realtor is... Well, first of all, let me go into this a couple of ways. First of all, there's a new law coming. You ready for this? July 1st that says smoke alarms are going to be upgraded. Let me ask you a question. In Bakersfield, are you required to have hardwired smoke alarms, or is battery okay? Okay. Starting next July, all battery-operated smoke alarms are going to have 10-year, non-removable, non-replaceable batteries. In other words, if you're like me and you have these battery-operated ones now, every year or two they start beeping, right? You got to replace the stupid battery. Last time it happened to me is 3 in the morning. I was debating whether to get up or not. But it kept beeping, so I had to get up and, you know. Anyway. Okay, so that's not going to happen anymore. Smoke alarms are not going to have that beep. Well, what about, is it going to beep at the end of 10 years? It's not. You're going to have to keep up with it for 10 years and keep track, because all of a sudden your smoke alarm's not going to work anymore. Anyway, so that's an interesting new law. But here's another reason why that's interesting. If you're a realtor, or if you're a property owner, and you have a tenant, sometimes you want to just go in there and see what's going on, right? See if the tenant's trashing the place, see if they're operating a meth lab in there, see if they're growing marijuana in there. So you just want to go in and look around. Did you know landlords do not have the right to just go look around? Do you know you can only enter the tenant's property with 24-hour notice for 4 reasons? 1, it's an emergency. The house is burning down. 2, the tenant asked you to come in to fix something. 3, you need to show the property to a prospective buyer or tenant. Or 4, everyone's favorite, I got to check the battery on the smoke alarm. Well, you're not going to have that one anymore because they aren't going to be checkable anymore. Fortunately, there's one more. Check the battery on the CO detector. Aha. And on the way to the carbon monoxide detector, you walk around the whole house, right? So check out, anyway. So, but here's the recent case. Imagine this. Realtor takes listing, tenant-occupied property. Seller and realtor decide, we need to have an open house. Yes, let's have an open house on Saturday. So on Friday, they give the tenant the proper 24-hour notice. We're going to do an open house tomorrow. Make yourself scarce from 1 to 4. Tenant says, no, I do not give you permission to have an open house. Landlord says, you have to give permission, and we give you 24-hour notice. One of the reasons we're entitled to come in is to show the property. We're showing the property. Tenant says, well, you can have an open house. You just can't have it tomorrow, Saturday. You can't have it Sunday either. In fact, you can't have it any weekends, because the law says I only have to let you in during normal business hours. And I think normal business hours are Monday through Friday, 9 to 5. Seller sued. They went to court. Seller says, I should have the right to do an open house on the weekend. You know what the judge said? For realtors, weekends are normal business hours. All right. They supported you. So you can still do open houses on the weekend, even if the tenant doesn't want you to. But unfortunately, what the court said is they put some special rules. They said to have an open house on the weekend, the tenant's entitled to 10 days notice. And you can only do 2 a month. And it can only be somewhere in the hours between 1 and 4:30. So they did impose special rules for particular types of showings, but at least they made it very clear. I don't care. It's weekend. Realtors work weekends, okay? The court recognizes that. So that is your normal business hours. And we salute you for that. because I'm not working Saturdays. Anyway, all right, so that's the latest on that. What else is going on? Let me talk about, one more thing, and then I'll talk about forms. So I've talked about the new laws on the deficiencies in the taxes, talked about the new disclosure law with the question on the TDS. Here's an interesting question. How many of you own a house and you have a neighbor, and in between your house and the neighbor's house is a fence or a wall? A lot of you. All right. So let's say that fence or that wall is directly on the boundary line. We call it a boundary fence. And in other words, it's not your fence, it's not their fence, it's both of your fence. It's your shared fence. Okay, fine. So let's say today you have one of these, and the neighbor comes over and they say, you know, I've been thinking, I think we need a new fence. And you know, I got this $50,000 idea here. And I want you to pay half. Today, you would have the right to say to that neighbor, drop dead. Jump in a lake. I don't think we need a new fence, and we certainly don't need a $50,000 new fence. Go away. And the neighbor would have to go away. Starting January 1st, you can't do that. You can't just blow off the neighbor. If the neighbor in writing notifies you, A, they think there's a need, B, this is their proposal, C, this is how much they think it's going to cost, D, this is how long they think it's going to take, and E, this is how much they want you to contribute, like half. You can't just blow them off. You have to respond. Now, your response could be, you're crazy, we don't need it. Even if we need it, it's way too expensive, and I don't want to do it. And then the first tenant says, I think I'm right and you're wrong. Now we have a problem. How are we going to resolve this problem? You're going to go to court. So lawyers love this new law. It's a new lawsuit. You can't just blow off your neighbor anymore. There's a process. Now, the good news, I guess, if you look at it this way, is the law says courts will only force you to contribute if it's reasonable, if it's not a financial hardship on you, and if the cost of doing the improvement will be reflected in that much increased value of the property. So if you can say, you know, that fence is going to cost $10,000. It's not going to increase the value of this house by $10,000. I don't know how you're going to prove that. You can hire an appraiser. Who knows how it's all going to work out? But the point is there's now a law. There's now a process that you can't avoid if you're ever in this situation. So you've got to live with it as adjoining landowners. Yes? Once again, if you can't agree, a judge is going to have to make the decision. Based on reasonableness, cost, fairness. There's going to be a presumption that what's there already is probably what's going to stay. If one wants to change it dramatically, it's going to be hard for them to prove that why should we, you know, they're probably not going to get away with that. We don't even know how these all cases are going to work out, but the point is there's a law now and there's a process and there are standards. Very good question. If we're dealing with a city or county wall, all bets are off. You know, forget everything I just said. There's nothing you can do. You're stuck with it, et cetera, et cetera. Obviously, the first thing you do is get a survey. I mean, that fence may be 6 inches over on your property, in which case it's your fence. On the other hand, it may be 6 inches over on their property, in which case it's their fence. They can do whatever they want, but you don't have to pay. Yeah. 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 If it's on his property, it's all him, you know. So this is just something, you can't blow them off anymore. That's the whole point, okay? By the way, what if the neighbor's tree, what if the branches are going over your fence? You have the right to cut them back to the boundary line. What if their roots are coming underneath? You can't just cut them. You're allowed to cut branches, you can't cut roots. You can go to the neighbor and say, listen, your property is causing me monetary damage. I'm going to hold you personally liable for the damage your tree is causing me, and let them try to figure out how to solve that problem. But you can't just arbitrarily just cut the roots, but you can cut the branches, okay? That's how that all works. All right. So let's talk about forms. How many forms are there on zip form? Just a wild guess. It's like 250. How many remember when there were like 5 forms on zip, you know? How many when the purchase contract was 2 pages? How many remember it was 1 page? Half a page. All right. I still have copies of these forms. Okay, everything has changed. There's 1 million forms. There's 250 forms, thousands of pages. It's very hard to keep up with this stuff. So you'll be happy to know that there's 7 new forms coming. I know. Don't worry. Once I tell you these 7 forms, you'll agree with me it's not a big deal. They're all one-page forms. And they're not crucial forms, but maybe one that's kind of important. Okay, so these are the forms coming out November 29th, okay? 7 new ones, and some of the ones you got are going to be revised slightly. I'll mention that. So what are the 7 new forms? First of all, in Bakersfield, Kern County, are you having, would you say your market is low inventory? Getting better, though, maybe? Okay. So you're getting multiple offers? Do you still get multiple offers? Okay, so let's say you get an offer. I'll just make up numbers. You get an offer of $200,000. You counter it at $210,000. You send out a counter offer, $210,000. What are you saying? You're saying to the buyer, you sign it and send it back by 5 o'clock on the 3rd day. You bought it. So you send out this counter. Then a day later, you get a new offer at $240,000. So you countered at $210,000. You get a new offer at $240,000. You immediately tell your seller, we just got an offer at $240,000. What do you want to do? Seller says, I like that one. Do you want to counter? No, let's just take it. Can you accept the $240,000 even though you got a counter out at $210,000? Yeah. But the problem is you got to accept it before the first one returns it. So imagine you give it to the seller sign, accept $240,000, immediately email it to the second agent. We're accepting your deal. 30 seconds after you send that email, the first agent emails you back the $210,000 accepted counter. Who bought the house? Well, I said, well, the $240,000 did because I sent it before I got it. That's not the issue. The issue is not who sent it first. The issue is who received it first. So maybe that second agent didn't open their email yet where you accepted the $240,000, but you opened your email getting the $210,000. You just sold it for $210,000. How do I avoid this problem? Don't open your email. Better way, of course, is before you accept the $240,000, you revoke the counter you've already got out. Just because the counter you sent out is good for 3 days doesn't mean you can't take it back a day later, an hour later, a minute later. You don't even have to do it in writing, but you better do it in writing or they're going to deny you ever told them. So you revoke that counteroffer, then you accept the new one. We even have a form for that if you want. It's called withdrawal of offer, WOO. And you, like I said, you can do it for the woo. Yeah, what was I thinking? Woo, you know. Anyway, so that's point number 1. You understand that concept. What about this? You get an offer, you counter it, and then you get another offer, and you want to counter that one too. Even though you sent out one counter, can you send out another one too? Yes. What happens if you send out both of them, they both come back? Who bought the house? First one back. They're going to argue about who was first. Obviously, once you send out one counter, if you want to counter another one, you make it a multiple counter. You check paragraph 4, you say this is a multiple. But then the first one is still a regular counter. So if that one comes back, even if the multiple comes back first, well, the multiple comes back first, the point is the first guy doesn't know that you have another multiple. They don't care. The point is they return the counter offer. You didn't revoke it, and they returned it by 5 o'clock on the 3rd day. They bought it. So obviously what you want to do is if you send out a regular counter, you get a new offer and you want to make that a multiple, you want to make the first one a multiple too. So some agents, they call up the first agent and says, you know that counter I sent you, it's now a multiple. Do you know you can't do it like that magically over the phone like that? You know, you'd have to revoke it and reissue it as a multiple. Some realtors have this brilliant idea. I'm getting an offer. I know another one's coming tomorrow. I want to counter both of them, but I don't want to wait. So I'll counter the first one today as a multiple, even though I haven't got the second offer yet. This is called fraud. Don't do this. You can't say it's a multiple unless you really are sending out, unless you are literally sending out more than one at the same time. Realtors have gotten in big trouble for this. They've gotten sued and they've lost. Their client has and the realtor gets blamed for it. I know, I told it to a group in Long Beach a couple of months ago, and this realtor comes up to me afterward. He says, Gov, I've been doing that for 20 years. Every counter I've ever sent is a multiple. I said, stop immediately. Don't do that anymore. All right. So we got that whole concept. All right, what am I building up to here? Starting November 29th, the counteroffer form you've known and loved all these years is going to be split into 2. There's going to be a regular counteroffer, and there's going to be a multiple counteroffer form. So if you want to do a multiple counter, instead of checking paragraph 4 on the regular form, you're just going to use a whole separate form. It's called SMCO, Seller Multiple Counter Offer. Otherwise, it's identical, same old thing. But there should be no confusion now. You're using a completely different form if you want to do a multiple. Okay? Pretty simple. That's new form number 1. New form number 2. Let's get back to short sales for a second. If you do, let me ask you this. You write an offer on a short sale. It gets accepted. Then it's submitted to the lender for the lender's approval. Let me back up a second. Did you know the CAR purchase contract that you use every day has 6 buyer contingencies? There's 6 ways for the buyer to get out of the deal. I mean, you don't have to write, you know this, just instinctively. It's inspections, disclosures, reports, CC&Rs, prelim, and the financing and the appraisal. Okay, so there's 6 ways to get out of a deal. Some buyers think, I got 17 days to change my mind. Technically, they have 17 days to cancel based on a contingency. But have you ever figured out that if you're doing a short sale, that's really contingency number 7? Because the entire deal is contingent on the seller's lender approving it. Okay, so imagine you make an offer. It's a short sale. Seller accepts it, submitted for approval. You know you have to remove your other contingencies in 17 days. But usually we don't even start that process until the lender approves it. Okay. So the next question is, so the entire deal is contingent on the seller's lender's approval. How long do I have to wait for the seller to make up their mind, lender to make up their mind? In other words, I'm not an escrow. I'm in contract to buy the short sale. I've waited a week or 2, and all of a sudden a new listing comes on the market, and the buyer says, I want that one. I'm tired of waiting for this short sale. I'm just going to go buy this one. Can they do that? No. See, some people think a short sale is not a real deal because you haven't opened escrow yet. So I can just walk away. No, you can't. You're in contract. You're committed to that seller. Well, how long do I have to wait? Forever. Unless you use the short sale addendum, SSA. What does that form say? It says you got to wait 45 days. Or whatever number you change it to. If you think that's too long, change it. But the point is, if you don't use the short sale addendum, buyer, you're contractually committed to that deal. You can't just walk away. All right. So, let's say the lender does approve the short sale. How does that work mechanically? Well, the lender notifies the seller. Let's say on day 40. You notify the seller, we've approved your short sale. What happens next to turn it into a real deal? Well, the seller has to notify the buyer that my lender has approved the short sale. We now have a deal. The new form that's just coming out is just simply the form you're going to use to tell the buyer. It's called the Declaration of Lender's Consent. I'll give you the official name. Delivery of or failure to deliver short sale lender written consent, Form DSSC. Delivery or failure to deliver short sale lender's written consent. Now, obviously, you've lived without this form up until now. You've done short sales without this form. Somehow, you've communicated to the buyer, the short sale's approved, let's go. But now, I think it's kind of nice. There'll be a nice official form that says, here's the lender's approval. By sending this to you, we are opening escrow, and escrow opens tomorrow, and all the deadlines start tomorrow. Like I said, you've handled this before, but without this form, but it just makes it a little smoother, I think. Plus, have you ever had a lender approve the short sale, but they say, you know, we'll only approve the short sale if you make some changes to the contract. So the lender notifies the seller, these are the changes we want. Well, the next thing that happens, maybe the seller's okay with that, but they don't know if the buyer's okay. So you got to tell the buyer, these are the changes the lender wants to make in the contract in order for them to approve the short sale. Well, you could use this form for that too. You'd send it to the buyer saying, these are the changes the tenant wants, the lender wants. Are you for them or not? If you're for them, say so, and then we have a deal. If you're not, say no, and we have a cancellation. And the other reason you could use this form is, let's say your 45 days have passed and you're tired of waiting. This form can be used by either the buyer or the seller to tell the other side, hey, I'm tired of waiting 45 days, goodbye. Because either the buyer or the seller can cancel once the 45 days have passed. Like I said, you've managed to handle short sales without this form all these years, I know. but I think it'll make it slightly easier to do a couple things. So that's 2 forms, okay? Third form, really simple. Do you know when you write an offer on a purchase contract, not only do you get the 8-page contract, you automatically get the 2-page buyer inspection advisory, right? That's the form that protects you from the buyer who comes back later and says, my realtor never told me to get an inspection. Yeah, they did. They gave you a 2-page addendum, told you all the inspections you should get. Here's a new form, buyer vacant land inspection advisory. Initials are BVLIA. This will be attached to the vacant land purchase contract. So if you're writing an offer on land, it's good to tell the buyer which inspections they should get when it's land. Buyer vacant land inspection advisory, BVLIA. BVLIA. So we got the seller multiple counteroffer form, SMCO. We got the delivery or failure to deliver consent to lender's short sale lender written consent. Even I can't remember that. DSSC, and we got the BVLIA, buyer vacant land inspection advisory. That's 3. 4 more to go. Next one is called, you ready for this? Pet addendum. You're a landlord. If you're a landlord, do you have to allow pets? No. Can you allow pets? Sure. If you're going to allow pets, though, maybe you want some rules. Tenant is responsible for the pet. Tenant takes law liability for the pet. Tenant won't, the pet must be vaccinated and licensed and blah, 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 blah. So it's just a nice addendum you can use if you're a landlord and you're allowing pets. Pet addendum form PA. What if the tenant has a service animal? You have to allow it, you know that? Even if you normally have a no pet policy, you have to allow it. Well, do you have to take the tenant's word for it, that they need a service animal? No, you're entitled to a note from a doctor? No. A health professional. They have a license of some kind, saying this tenant has a condition and this animal will alleviate a symptom of that condition. Are you entitled to know what the condition is? No. You can't go up to the tenant and say, what's wrong with you? No, don't do that. Don't do that. If the doctor says there's something wrong with them, you take their word for it. And you have to allow the pets. Now, you can still use the pet addendum because the pet still has to comply with all the rules. What if there's a service animal and the service animal bites somebody? You could tell the tenant, you're entitled to have a service animal, but not that service animal. The pet addendum says if your pet has vicious tendencies, you got to leave. So your pet has vicious tendencies, you got to leave. Or get a different service animal. But you got to get rid of that service animal or you got to leave. Because this service animal doesn't follow all the guidelines. You're still required that. You're also entitled to the service animal being proven that it's a trained service animal. Problem is, there's now something called companion animal, comfort pet. These aren't trained, it's just a companion. So the tenant goes to the doctor and says, hey doctor, I'm lonely. But if I had a pet, I wouldn't be so lonely. Well, that's not going to work because it's got to be a medical condition. Loneliness is not a medical condition. But if the doctor prescribes that the tenant is, let's say, depressed or something, and they need an animal that would provide companionship or comfort, if they can get a note from a doctor or health professional, you have to allow it, and you can't really require it to be licensed or certified because it's just a companion. It's not licensed or certified. Exactly, right. Which I'll talk about in a second, by the way. But anyways, that's another issue. But question? Yeah. Unfortunately, no. Good question. You cannot require extra security. You can't require extra rent. You can't require pet insurance. You can require all that for a regular pet because you don't have to allow it at all. But if it's a service animal or comfort animal, you have to allow it, and you can't require any extra money either. Okay, so the next question is, what if the service animal is like a Saint Bernard? Or it's a Rottweiler, you know? Well, the law says, fortunately, HUD says, if the animal will A, pose a threat to others, or B, cause an undue financial hardship to the landlord, you could say no. And you know, you talk to insurance companies, a lot of insurance companies won't give you insurance on your property as a landlord with certain types of animals. in which case that's an undue financial hardship. You could say to the tenant, I'm sorry, there's financial reasons why I'm going to have to say no. Get a different comfort animal, okay? So those are the, and these have been, the reason I'm talking about all this issue, I mean, yes, there's a new form, the pet addendum, but this has just been a real big issue this year, a lot of litigation on this whole pet thing, okay? Someone mentioned medical marijuana. What if you, can a landlord say no smoking? Of course. Can a landlord say no smoking inside or outside? Yes, of course. Do you know if you're in the city of Pasadena, you have to say no smoking? It's illegal to smoke in a rental property in Pasadena, even if the landlord doesn't care. Anyway, so you have a tenant who smokes. You're allowed to smoke. What if the tenant next door says, so Unit A smokes, but Unit B says, that smoke from Unit A is bothering me. You say to Unit B, too bad. But then Unit B goes to a doctor, and they get a note from the doctor. My patient has a respiratory problem caused by tobacco smoke. Now you got to go back to tenant A and say, you got to either stop smoking, close your windows, put some device in your property that sucks all the smoke out of the air, because I have a sick tenant next to you. I have to accommodate their illness. Okay? What if there's a vacant unit down the hall? Can you go to tenant B and say, move down the hall and you're farther away from the smoker? You can say that. What if tenant B says, no, I'd rather stay here and they can't smoke? You say, you don't have that right, tenant. I'm reasonably accommodating you by offering to let you move to a similar unit down the hall. If you don't want to take my offer, too bad for you. So there's a whole reasonableness thing here. But what if there is no unit down the hall and there's nothing Unit A can do to stop the smoke from going into Unit B? Well, you're going to have to tell A to stop smoking, because that would be your accommodation for the illness of tenant B. Well, what if tenant B has the medical marijuana card? Hey, I'm sorry, I'm disabled. I have medical marijuana here. I have to smoke medical marijuana. You can say no. It's different than the pet thing. You can say absolutely it violates federal law. No medical marijuana. Although you could say to the tenant, tell you what, I'll allow it if you share it with me. You know, no. Just kidding. Just kidding. You can say no to medical marijuana. All right? All right. That's 4 forms, pet addendum. 5 form, 5th form. Pool, hot tub, and spa addendum. What are the initials for that? That would be PHSA, pool, hot tub, spa addendum. Same concept. You're a landlord. There's a pool. There's a hot tub. The tenants are allowed to use the pool, but you want to put some restrictions. No smoking, no drinking, no jumping in the water, no, plastic cups only, no glass, things like that. No nudity, It doesn't say that. It doesn't say that. It doesn't say that. You can add that if you want. Okay, so very simple form, right? That's 5 forms. 2 more forms that are brand new. You have a tenant. The tenant doesn't pay their rent. They're a day late. Could you evict a tenant for being a day late? No, you got to give them 3-day notice to pay or quit. If they pay in 3 days, they're good. Okay. We got a form for that in zip form, 3-day notice to pay or quit. Let's say a tenant does something else wrong. They violate the lease and they put up a sign on the wall or something, and there's a rule that says you can't put signs on the wall. Can you evict them for that? No, you have to give them 3-day notice. Take down the sign or leave. 3-day notice to cure the breach of covenant or quit. So we got a form like that on zip form, 3-day notice to cure covenant or quit. But what about the tenant who, they do something really bad, like they commit a crime, or they're using the house as a meth lab, or they sublet it without your permission? Can you evict them for that? Yes. Do you have to give them a chance to fix it? No. Can I just file an unlawful detainer? No, you still got to give them 3 days notice first. You still got to give them a 3-day notice to quit. Give them 3 days to get out so they don't get the unlawful detainer on their record. That's a form we've never had, and that's a form we have now. Notice, it's just notice to quit. Not 3-day notice, it's a 3-day notice to quit. Not to pay or quit, not to cure covenant or quit, just quit. Just leave. I'm telling you 3 days. You have no choice here. I'm just giving you the courtesy of a 3-day notice, because if you're out in 3 days, you don't get the unlawful detainer on your record. It's just NTQ, notice to quit. No, because it's a different circumstance. Sometimes you have to give them 3 days to do something, or sometimes you always got to give them 3 days, but sometimes you don't even have to give them a chance to fix the problem. Yes, you have 3 days to clean up the meth lab. No, you don't. You just want them out. You still got to give them 3 days notice to quit, right? You're not giving them a chance, but you still got to give them the form. The point is, we've never had this form. That's a crime too, but you still got to give them the 3 day. You think you just call the police and throw this criminal off the property. The police are going to require an eviction, so you still got to start the 3 day notice to quit. Yeah. I'm assuming there's a reason. I'm assuming there's a reason. They violated the rules. They broke the law. I'm saying they broke the lease that says no subletting without landlord's permission. They sublet. But that's what this is. This is a 3 day notice to quit for breach of covenant. But the point is, you're not giving them 3 days to fix it or else. You're just saying, get out. What I'm saying is, sometimes you don't have to give them a chance to fix the problem. You're just telling them to leave. You're no question. You're just telling them to leave. The point is, we just haven't. That's a simple form that we just never had. That's the whole point. You know, it's up to a judge ultimately. Some judges are going to say certain things are just not curable. But we've solved that for this form, because this particular form only refers to 3 things: subletting, breaking the law, or what's the other one? Oh, creating a nuisance, a public nuisance. So there are other things that a lot of judges would agree that you don't need to give them the opportunity to fix it, and that's sort of a case-by-case basis. You try to convince the judge. To be safe, if it's not one of these, you just give them 3 days to fix it, or else, if you think it's something they can't fix in 3 days. You know what I mean? You really want them out there, fine, I'll give you 3 days to fix it, or else. But the point is, sometimes, at least these 3 for sure, you don't have to give them the chance to fix it. You can just say leave. The other point is, you do have to give them 3 days before you can start the unlawful detainer, though. Yeah, every lease says if tenant violates the law on the property, that's grounds to evict. They get convicted of a crime on that property. Yeah, as opposed to something. Yeah, you can't evict them because they did a DUI somewhere, unless you put that on your lease. If you commit a DUI, I'm evicting you. That's perfectly legal if they agree to that, right? If they agree to that. All right. Okay, one more. I think that's 6. Last new form. Have you ever had a situation where one of the clients in the transaction is a corporation, or a partnership, or an LLC? Well, you know, the question is, who's going to sign on behalf of the corporation? Who's going to sign on behalf of the partnership? Well, in other words, you're the other side of the corporation, you see a signature. How do I know that you have the authority to sign on behalf of the corporation? New form. New form. It's called the Corporation LLC Partnership Signature Addendum. CLLC. Corporation Limited Liability. They don't throw in a word for partnership. The point is, everybody would sign this form at the beginning of the deal. Everyone agreed that John Smith is the president of ABC. John is basically saying, yes, I swear to God, under penalty of fraud, I am the president. So from now on, every time you see my signature in any document, I am signing on behalf of the corporation. It's not a crucial. I mean, we've already got a form like this called trust signature addendum. So if you're dealing with a trust, someone says, I swear I'm the trustee. We already have a probate signature addendum where the person says, I swear I'm the estate representative. Now we just have one for corporations. By the way, did you know this? Yeah, go ahead. Well then, the answer to that one all depends on what does the trust document say. The trust document itself should say something like either trustee can sign or both need to sign. Then you always got to have both. Yes, you got to follow the trust document, which is similar to a corporation, by the way. Did you know with a corporation now you need 2 signatures? You don't just need one, now you need 2 for most documents, like a purchase contract. So who can sign on behalf of a corporation? The president. Who else? someone who has authorization from the board of directors of the corporation. So you got to sort of make sure. That's why I use this form. You make two people say, yes, I have the ability to sign on behalf of the corporation. Who can sign on behalf of a partnership? Any partner. This is why it's dangerous to have partners that you don't trust. Because if you're in a partnership, let's say the partnership owns property. 5 of you as a partnership. I mean, if you own it as tenants in common, all 5 of you have to sign to do anything. But if you have a partnership holding title, any partner can obligate the rest of them. Unless you have a partnership agreement that says in the partnership agreement, everyone needs to sign, or this person's the designated managing partner, or something like that. Okay? All right. That is it for the new forms. Should I tell you about the forms that are changing? Why not? That's why you're here, right? Okay. Not a lot of critical, I'm just going to mention a couple. Okay? Not a lot of interesting, crucial things. How many of you have ever done a transaction involving seller financing? Quite a few. You probably know that if it's residential 1 to 4 and the seller is financing, there's a form required under California law called the Seller Financing Addendum that is filled out by the buyer's agent. Starting January 1st, we have the Dodd-Frank regs coming into existence. Some of these regs deal with seller financing. Some of these regs say if you do seller financing on residential 1 to 4, in certain circumstances, you are a loan originator. And not only do you have to do the California Seller Financing Addendum, you also have to provide the truth in lending disclosures to the buyer. Fortunately, there's an exemption if you only do 1 in a 12-month period. So if you're only selling 1 house, it's your house and you finance it, as long as there's no negative amortization, as long as the interest rate won't change for 5 years, and as long as you're not the builder, you can still do seller financing and you don't need this Dodd-Frank stuff. So our seller financing form now is going to add a 4th page that says what I just said. It says, if this is the only one you're doing this year, you're good. But if you're doing more than one, call your lawyer and get the other federal forms that you have to do. Okay? So it's going to disclose on the seller financing addendum when you're exempt and not exempt from more stuff. You can still have balloon payments. That's a good question. Listen, and I wasn't even going to say that, but you could actually do more than 1 a year and be exempt from Dodd-Frank. You can do up to 3 a year and be exempt from Dodd-Frank if there's no balloon. I don't think I've ever seen seller financing without a balloon payment, but theoretically it is possible. If you have a fully amortized seller financing, no balloon, no no negative amortization fixed for at least 5 years, you could do 3 a year without being a loan originator. Okay? Yes. Non-owner occupied if we're talking residential 1 to 4. Yep. Residential 1 to 4. All right. So that form is just having a slight change there. What other forms are changing? Have you ever noticed the statewide buyer and seller advisory keeps growing? It's now like 11 pages heading towards 12. Why does it keep growing? Because every time a realtor gets sued and loses, we put a new paragraph on the form. So you won't get sued for the same thing. Well, guess what the latest lawsuit that a realtor lost was? You take a listing, you put it on the MLS, it goes up on all these other websites, and the seller sued the realtor saying, you know, all of a sudden my property is all over the place on the internet. It's on all these websites, and I look at these sites, and some of the information on these other sites is not accurate. It's your fault, realtor. You need to go off, scour the entire World Wide Web and make sure that every single place my property is mentioned, it's completely accurate. And they won the case. But they'll never win it against you. Because the statewide buyer and seller advisor now says, seller understands that it's not the broker's job to police the internet to make sure that everything about their property on the internet is accurate, because you can't control that stuff. See why that form keeps growing? There's the other form that keeps growing, the SPQ, the Seller Property Questionnaire. Why does that keep growing? Because every time a seller loses a lawsuit, we add a new question to remind the seller they need to disclose something. You ready for the latest? Seller sued a house, buyer moves in. A couple months later, the buyer says, you know, I can tell people have been smoking in this house. I couldn't tell at the open house. It smelled real nice then, but now I live here. Everything's got tobacco smoke. So they sued the seller for not disclosing that the sellers were smokers. And they won. This will never happen to you, because there's now a question on the SPQ. Seller, are you aware, have any occupants of the house been smokers? Occupants, not guests, occupants. So the seller answers the question to the best of their ability. Buyer can't come back later and say, you didn't tell me. Isn't law wonderful? We just keep adding things to it. These all come out November 29th. Now, I'm glad you asked that. There's one form that's coming out December 31st. When you sell a condo, did you know that the HOA is supposed to provide a cover sheet to the buyer saying, you know, which documents they have and which they don't? Because not all HOAs have bylaws, right? Not all HOAs have articles. So not only are HOAs supposed to give all the documents like the CC&Rs to the buyer, or at least send you a link where you can get them, but they're supposed to tell you which documents they have and don't have. I don't know, you tell me if HOAs do this or not. A lot of HOAs don't know what they're doing, so they don't do it. You've noticed that, right? The problem is, so to help HOAs, there's a form on Zip Form called Form HOA, Homeowner Association Information Request. So for years I've been advising you, when you list a condo, give that form to your escrow officer, have your escrow officer send it to the HOAs, and tell the HOA, you know, you're supposed to fill out this form and send it back. That form, all of the code sections referenced on that form are changing on January 1st. Which means you still got to use the old one right up until December 31st. And starting January 1st, you use the new one. So that form's not even going to change till December 30th. But you got to sort of keep track of this. What if I'm an escrow that opens in December and closes in January? The question is going to be, when did you give the buyer the HOA docs? If that happened in December, the old form was the one to use. What if the HOA what if you don't do this? It's not your problem. You're not in violation. The HOA is in violation, but it's just sometimes nice to have the HOA do the right thing so it helps your buyer out. So anyway, that form is changing December 31st, okay? All right. Yeah. The Davis-Sterling Act is simply the name of the legislation that was passed many years ago that regulates homeowner associations. It says things like, there are all sorts of interesting things in there. Like, have you ever had an HOA where they have articles, bylaws, CC&Rs, and rules, and they contradict each other? The CC&R says one thing, the rules say the exact opposite. You say, what the heck takes precedence here? You know there's actually a law that says CC&Rs take precedence over articles, articles have precedence over bylaws, bylaws have precedence over rules. So rules are the lowest. The point is, we got this Davis-Sterling Act. This is the law that has all those rules like that. Like certain things require a majority vote, certain things require unanimous vote, you know, all those things. The point is, all of the civil code sections where you find the Davis-Sterling Act are going to be renumbered on January 1st. Right now, they're all like Civil Code 1365. They're all going to be Civil Code 4425 or something starting January 1st. Same laws, different place. The HOA. I think it's a listing agent, and like I said, you really don't have the legal responsibility to do it. I just think it's a good thing to do. I can't say you actually have to. So I have a listing agent, and the seller doesn't need to sign it. You just need to send it to the HOA. A good HOA knows this already, and a good HOA already has this form, and the good HOA will actually provide it without you even asking for it. Never once in your life has this happened, right? Okay. Right. The HOA. Yeah. The problem with the HOA being at fault, of course, is what do you do with the HOA that's at fault? Do you call the HOA police? There's no HOA police. There's no one. I mean, for realtor screws up, you call the BRE on them. HOA screws up, there's no one to call. You can sue them, but who wants to do that? So you're stuck with it. Anyway, so that's the situation there. All right. Any other forms? So I've told you all 7 new forms. I've told you some of the forms that are having minor changes. Nothing big. I don't think there's anything else worth mentioning other than one more thing on the forms. And that is, so all of these form changes I just told you about are going to take effect November 29th, except for the HOA form, which is changing December 31st. And you're used to this. CAR typically changes forms twice a year, right? April, November. April or May, November. You're used to this, the rhythm of the form changes. Once in a while, have you noticed, though, the CAR changes forms at other times? In between April and November, there's a form change. Why do we screw up the normal rhythm and make a form change in the middle of the year? Only if it's an emergency. Did you notice this year there was an emergency? What happened? What was the emergency? The emergency was a bunch of realtors got sued. You say that happens all the time. What's the big deal? Because they all got sued for the same thing. And what were the realtors all of a sudden getting sued for? Pocket listings. Let's talk about this for 2 seconds. What is a pocket listing? A better name for it is an off-market listing, where you take a listing and instead of putting it on the MLS and exposing it to the entire world, you put it in your pocket. Or you just share it with selected agents at other offices. You're not exposing it to everyone. Off-market listing. Is that illegal to do that? No. But it's hard to prove that it's not a breach of fiduciary duty to your client. It's hard to look a client in the eye and say, yes, it's not in your interest to put this on the MLS. Why would it not be in their interest to put it on the MLS? The only thing I can think of is, yes, some clients, they value privacy so much, convenience, fast sale. They don't want people coming through their property. They don't want open houses. They don't want people showing it. They want you to find the buyer. As long as they understand that they're giving something up when they do that. Because when you don't put it on the MLS, you're not exposing it. The best buyer in the world might be out there that you're not getting it. Plus, all the agents have no incentive to show your property if you're not offering, if you're not sharing. The point is this. All of a sudden, this has always been an issue, but all of a sudden earlier this year, there's 1 million lawsuits against realtors. Because all the attorneys who specialize in suing you got together. They have meetings just like this. You know what the topic of the meeting is? How to sue a realtor. New theories on realtor suing. And they have nice food out there too. And that's what they're talking about. So they all figured out this year that there's a lot of pocket listings out there. And sellers probably may not really understand what's going on. So here's what was happening. And attorneys would actually call people up and say, hey, congratulations, I just see you sold your house. Congratulations. But I also noticed it wasn't in the MLS. Did your agent explain to you the benefits you might have lost by not putting in the MLS? And the seller says, no, they didn't really explain that to me. Then the attorney says, maybe you should hire me to sue them. And the seller says, good idea. And this happened. This is what's happening. All of a sudden, a bunch of lawsuits. And a lot of threatened lawsuits. So did you notice what happened in July? There's a new paragraph on the CAR listing form. Page 2 of all of your CAR listing forms have a paragraph. Half of the page of page 2 of your listing form is now a paragraph that explains what the MLS is, what the benefits of the MLS are. The fact is you have to opt out of the MLS if you don't want it on the MLS, and the fact that the listing agent has to present all offers whether it's in the MLS or not. And did you notice this paragraph has to actually be initialed by the sellers, like the arbitration clause? So this is to protect you, the listing agent who takes the off-market listing, protects you from the seller who comes back and says, it was never explained to me what this whole MLS thing was. So I'm really telling you 2 things. I'm telling you, number 1, there's a new paragraph to protect you. But number 2 is just be careful about pocket listings in general. Just remember, you have a fiduciary duty to your seller. The fiduciary duty means to do what's best for your client, even if it's not what's best for you. And you know, it is easy to convince a jury that a pocket listing benefits the realtor at the expense of the seller. And you know exactly what I'm talking about. So just be careful if you're doing this. If you're doing an off-market listing, make sure that the seller understands what they're giving up and they believe it's in their best interest to do it that way. If that's what the way they want to do it, there's nothing wrong with it. But you're setting yourself up if they don't really agree to that. At least this paragraph helps out that whole process. But this has been a big issue. I mean, I've been in the, some of you have been around as long as I have. Some of you have known 28 years. And we've seen markets go up and down. And it always happens when there's low inventory, people are tempted not to put it on the MLS because they've already got a buyer and they want to double end it. And they convince themselves it's in their seller's best interest to do this. And it's not always in their seller's best interest to do it. Yeah. Very good question. Yeah, I was going to address that. I think what he's getting, you have a buyer. They want a property. They won't even give you a listing, but they're willing to do a deal with you. No, you don't have any fiduciary duty to them to convince them to put it in the MLS. You're working with a buyer. And they're a FSBO. Maybe they'll do a single party listing reluctantly, you know. But yes, it's not, you're not really considered to have a fiduciary. They didn't come to you to do a full service listing. You came to them with a buyer. And you're just trying to make a deal for your buyer, but it may involve you getting a single party listing. You're not going to get in trouble for that. That's not what I'm getting at. What I'm getting is you take a full service, full listing, and then convince them not to put it in the MLS. Right. Yeah, I think the Forms Committee realized that commercial business brokering is a completely different thing. It's just not the same thing. It really isn't. And the courts, I think, recognize that too, very much. But we've just seen a lot of lawsuits this year, more than normal in this type of market. We've seen more pocket listings than normal, and we've seen more lawsuits than normal. Yeah, I love the listing where it hits the market, hits the MLS, and 30 seconds later it's pending. Which means in 30 seconds they found a buyer, wrote up an offer, presented the offer, got the offer accepted, delivered it back to the buyer's agent, all in 30 seconds. Amazing how quickly things can happen, you know? You and I know exactly what happened. They already had the buyer. They put it on the MLS for 30 seconds just so they wouldn't violate the rules. But in effect, they already had the deal in their pocket. And like I said, it's perfectly legal if the seller understands what was happening and what they were giving up and what could have happened, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, we get this on the hotline all day long. Frustrated realtors complaining. I had a buyer, I submitted an offer, it wasn't even responded to. Now the property's in escrow for less money than my buyer wanted to pay. So you're suspecting your offer wasn't even presented, which, by the way, violates a whole bunch of laws. You're entitled to three things. Number one, when you submit an offer and you follow up your offer with a communication to the listing agent saying, I just want you to acknowledge, please, that you got my offer. If they don't acknowledge that within 24 hours, some MLSs are 48, you can contact the seller directly. Just to tell them that you have an offer, you submitted, you haven't heard back from the agent, even that they got the offer. Second, once they have their offer, they have to present it. And they got to present it as soon as practicable, at least before it expires on the third day. And third, you have the right to be present when your offer is presented, unless the seller in writing says they don't want you to be present. So if you're running into this, we got this nice letter on our sample legal letter thing, which is the letter to the listing agent asking politely, when can I present my offer in person to your seller? And if they say no, you're entitled to something signed by the seller who says, I don't want her to be present. And if they don't give you that, they're violating the rules. You can file a complaint. Okay, if you didn't hear his questions, his first one was the problem with zip form. When you're changing dates, you got to go through each one, and I'll pass that along. The other one is more of a legal question, which is you make an offer. Like I said, there's 6 contingencies, and you can get out of the deal based on any of those contingencies. And I guess the thinking is it goes without saying that you should get your deposit back, because if you're canceling the deal and you have the right to cancel the deal, what possible right does the seller have to keep your deposit? What you're saying is you'd like it to be clearer in the contract that if the buyer is canceling based on a contingency in black and white, seller will return the deposit. That's a pretty good point. So if you're running into problems with that. Did they agree in writing? Breach of contract then. You can... Buyer can say, A, I'm not going to close until you do it, or B, I'm going to sue you to make you do it. It doesn't say that. In other words, but that's just fundamental breach. If they agree in some email or some addendum that they will do this repair, they've contractually committed. If they don't do it, it's a breach of contract. Which gives you the choice of either canceling or suing them to make them do what they promised to do. That's your recourse. Yeah, that... Right, right. No, very good question. Closing does not waive your rights at all. Of course, the seller will try to make you sign something. By signing this, you agree that you're okay with this or something like that, but and don't sign it. But simply by closing does not in any way take away your rights as a buyer to enforce what they should have done.
I've got 2 questions. One related to what we've been talking about as far as getting your offer presented, the other is unrelated. But first, isn't it true that before you would go, let's say you wanted to consider your offer is not being presented, and you go to the seller, if that is as a broker, would you not go to the broker first, and if the broker doesn't respond, then you deal with the seller?
Yeah, you're asking a couple of questions there. First of all, let me be very precise. Remember, I didn't say you could go to the seller because your offer is not being presented. I said you could go to the seller if they don't even acknowledge that they got your offer. So once they got your offer, then you don't go to the seller. Then your next question is a practical matter. Shouldn't I complain to the broker? Yeah, I think as a practical matter, you go to the broker. Yeah, you're not allowed to go to the seller. You can only go to the seller if they don't acknowledge receipt of the offer in the first place. Once they've got your offer, the next issue is them presenting it or allowing you to be present. If they don't allow that, your remedy is to file a complaint against them, not to contact the seller directly. And I agree with you. As a practical matter, you always go to their broker and make sure the broker knows what's going on.
My second question is unrelated to something I've wanted to ask you for several years now. There is this form in this form, we're told over and over we should not be using one filled out by the seller. And yet, why does CAR even have that form?
Very good question. There's a form on zip form called NHD, Natural Hazard Disclosure. Let me be very technical about this. Okay. The law says sellers and listing agents are personally liable if you don't tell the buyer if they're in an earthquake, one of the 2 earthquake zones, the 2 flood zones, or the 2 fire zones. You have personal liability if you don't tell them that yes or no, you're in one of those zones. Second, there's a completely separate law that says not only do you have to tell them that, but you have to use this special form called the NHD form to tell them. Okay. But then there's another law that says if you hire a third-party company Property ID or First American or whatever, they assume all the responsibility for doing this. You have no liability. But the form still has to be filled out. The point is, every NHD company I know incorporates that form into their report. So as long as you sign on their report as the seller and the listing agent, you're good. So why is that form even on Zip Form? For the crazy agent who wants to save $100 and wants to go to the Kern County clerk's office and try to read the maps themselves, figuring I don't need somebody else to read these maps, I can read these maps, save $100, taking the risk that if they make a mistake, they're personally liable, by the way. That situation, they would have to use the NHD form on Zip Form because they're not having a third-party company.
Okay, now, what I've been doing for years, and now that
Yeah.
discuss this, I think I understand how I do it. I'm writing on the offer given by seller's choice.
Right.
Occasionally you get one of these agents that wants to see this CAR NHD.
And they don't hire a company?
I don't want it. I want
You want a third-party report.
So probably the best thing to do is on that line on that purchase contract, write in third-party provider instead of saying seller's choice.
Yeah, and I think that line you're talking about, which is paragraph 4D, I believe, it actually says you're asking for a third-party report. Maybe it doesn't use the words third-party, but it says NHD report. I think it's a good idea to write in the words third-party. I've always thought report implies you hired someone to do it as opposed to you doing it yourself. I see what you're saying. Good point. So maybe we need to say third-party report to make that clear. Well, technically, you're still supposed to sign as the listing agent. Here's another dumb thing. That form that you've all seen says seller, seller, agent, agent, buyer, which implies that both agents are supposed to sign. I'll tell you right now, the law only requires the listing agent to sign. So why the second line with the agent? I guess if there's two listing agents, you know. But seriously, buyer's agents do not have to sign that form, but listing agents and sellers still sign. Why does the buyer sign it? The buyer just signs acknowledging that they got it. Okay? Crazy. That form should reflect reality better than it, but it's a government form. We can't change it. Okay? Right. Right. I mean, that's fine. That happens a lot, too. You take a listing, and it's not that they don't want it in the MLS. They don't want it in the MLS yet. Once again, as long as the seller is knowing and understanding and wants to do it however they want to do it, you don't have a problem. Ideally, just so they can't come back later and say, why did my realtor delay it for 2 weeks, you know? I mean, I'm being paranoid, of course, but I see realtors getting sued, so your board requires whatever the MLS requires, you definitely got to do that, for sure. I'm just even looking at perspective. Yes, sir. Right. Right. Yeah, the question is, some of these rules about presenting offers and being allowed to be present, what if the seller's in a different state, right? Is that what you're saying? Could be a bank, like an REO or something. By the way, if it's an REO sale, forget everything I said today. They're going to do whatever they want. But anyway, yeah. Right. So they're not even a member of this MLS, probably. So you can't really file a complaint against. You could technically, you're still entitled. If they're going to, their MLS probably has a similar rule that you're entitled to be present. Maybe the offer's emailed to the client. You're allowed to participate in the email. I mean, it depends on what the rules are of the MLS where it's listed. But they probably have some type of similar rule that allows you to somehow participate in the presentation. It's still probably there. Okay, I'm starting to lose my audience. Let me wrap this up. Where are you guys going? You're not having fun here? Okay. Couple more things, and then I'll take more questions. I'm basically done. No more forms to talk about. No more. I can spend 60 seconds to update you on any other thing I think you should know. If any of you do 1031 exchanges, there's a new law that says if you do a 1031 exchange, you're exchanging a property in California for a property outside of California on a delayed exchange. There's a new requirement next year. You have to file an annual informational tax return with the Franchise Tax Board regarding that out-of-state property every year until you recognize the gain or get rid of that property. Talk to your accountant about that. If you do commercial, there's a new law taking effect January 1st that says if you sell or lease commercial property over 10,000 square feet, or starting July, it applies to sales or leases of commercial property over 5,000 square feet, you must disclose to the new buyer or the new tenant how much energy the property has been using over the last 12 months, and how does that compare to similar buildings in Bakersfield? Don't groan too much. Fortunately, on paragraph 7 of the commercial purchase contract and paragraph 14 of the commercial lease, there will be a link to a website, which is the EPA's website, where you can follow the directions, create a profile in your owner's name, send it to the utility company. The utility company will have to provide this information to you within 30 days. So you got to start the process at least 30 days before you try to sell or lease the property. Guess what? Here we are, November the 13th, and the website's not ready yet. So have you heard that recently? The website's not ready yet? So hopefully it'll be ready by January 1st. So those of you that deal in commercial, you got to deal with this. This only applies to pure commercial, not land. All right. Very last thing is HUD has turned over the responsibility to the what are they going to do? The Consumer Financial Protection Bureau thing, that new thing. They've turned over responsibility for enforcing RESPA as of like this week. But guess what? This new entity looks like they're going to be even more aggressive than HUD on enforcing RESPA. Specifically, be wary, realtors. Remember that RESPA prohibits you from offering to pay referral fees to unlicensed people for referrals on residential 1 to 4. So if you're looking for a buyer of 5 units or more, you're looking for a vacant land buyer or seller, you're looking for a rental, you're looking for a commercial, you can offer people money, say, refer me a client, I'll give you money. But if you're looking for a buyer or a seller for residential 1 to 4, you know this, you can't offer them an inducement. You can't put an ad in the paper. If you refer me a client at close of escrow, I'll pay you $1,000. I still see that every now and then. What that ad is really saying is, dear federal government, I'm a criminal. Come and arrest me. Here's my address. So they're going to be, they've already started to be even more aggressive than HUD was. So you can't offer inducements to people. You can offer inducements to people to be your client, right? List with me at close of escrow, I'll give you cash. Legal. Buy with me at close of escrow, I'll give you cash. Legal. You're not paying them to refer you a business. You're giving them money to be your client. That's okay. And it's also okay to thank you for someone after the fact. A former client of yours gives you a referral. You want to thank them. You can even thank them with cash. But don't give them more than $250. Because that's an unwritten rule that the federal government says, that looks like you set up some referral fees scheme here. It's not just a thank you.
I came in possession recently of a letter that was sent by a real estate agent to my best friend who's an attorney, soliciting referral business, offering to pay him.
You cannot pay referral fees to attorneys either, unless the attorney also has a broker's license. Obviously, you can pay referral fees to people with real estate licenses, and it doesn't even need to be a California real estate license. This person is an attorney. Attorneys are not entitled to referral fees. Only realtors are entitled to, only real estate licensees are entitled to referral fees. You understand the distinction? Nothing new here. It's just that HUD is a new sheriff in town. HUD is no longer enforcing RESPA. Consumer Finance Protection Bureau is. I'm sure they're going to be at least as aggressive as HUD, if not more. If you didn't hear, yes, the United States Supreme Court said it's perfectly okay to pay, charge any fee you want. You can charge administrative fee, transaction coordinator fee, escrow coordinator fee. You can just make stuff up. As long as the client is willing to pay it, the government cannot second guess you on charging fees. So that's good news. Why didn't I mention that already? Because it happened about a year ago. I thought I told you that last year. But that is definitely good news. Every businessman and woman in the room, you can charge fees to your clients. You can make them up if you want. Seriously. If your client's willing to pay it, no one can come from the government or the courts to second guess you and say, what are they getting for that fee? Hey, they agree to pay it. It doesn't matter what they're getting for it. I structure my compensation this way. Okay? Any last minute questions? Hi there. Yes. I would think each agent should do their own AVID form. Is that what you're asking? Yeah, I mean, the AVID form, remember, it's not a mandatory form. Both realtors, every transaction you do, you each have your own obligation to do a reasonably diligent visual inspection and disclose everything that doesn't look right. If you think you can fit that into 3.5 lines on the 3rd page of the TDS where you sign, that's your business. I think a good realtor always has more than that to say, needs to use an addendum, and the AVID is the best addendum to use because the AVID has a lot of great disclaimers on there that protects the realtor from the client who says, hey, my realtor didn't pull the permits. Hey, my realtor didn't climb on the roof. I thought she was going to climb on the roof. And if you don't use that form, they can come back and say, my realtor led me to believe she was going to climb on the roof. That's why I didn't hire a roofing inspector. And realtors have actually lost those cases, which is why we came out with the AVID form in the first place. Not only does it give you more room to write, it has this disclaimers that tells the client that you're not a home inspector, you're not going to do all this stuff. The SPQ is not mandatory at all. I think it's in the seller's interest to use it because, as I tried to tell you earlier, every time there's a new lawsuit against the seller that they lose, we add a new question. Everything on that form has been seller lawsuits that they've lost. It's complete severance from the TDS. The TDS is required by the seller. The SPQ is recommended by the seller. The AVID, if it's more than 4 units, you don't even have to look at it. You can sell a house and get paid a commission. If it's not residential 1 to 4, you never even have to visit the property. If there's anything you know about the property, material facts that you're aware of, you'd have to disclose it. But you have no obligation to do a visual inspection of anything that's not residential 1 to 4, so you don't need to do an AVID on anything that's not 1 to 4. Nothing noted, I think, is good. I think it's better than just not putting anything at all. Yeah, I think nothing noted is good. Which one? Okay. Right. 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 Real quick, remember, there's a law I told you about a year or two ago that says if you do repair work on a pre-78 property that involves disturbing more than 6 square feet of interior painted surface or 20 square feet of exterior painted surface, the contractor that does the work must be doing proper EPA techniques to avoid the lead dust going through the air. So they have to do certain things. All the SPQ is reminding the seller to tell the buyer if you recently did some work on your pre-78 house and the contractor didn't do it the right way. Of course, I know what you're saying. How do I even know if the contractor did it the right way? I guess theoretically you might know. I don't know. But the point is you gotta keep that in mind. But did you know that 80% of pre-78 homes in California have no lead paint? So you can always get your house certified one time by a lead paint inspector that this house has never had lead paint. And then from that day forward, if you do any work on the property, you don't have to worry about hiring the more expensive contractor who charges the extra money because they're doing the special techniques. The question on the SPQ, though, is just asking the seller, as far as you're aware, did you ever do any work on your pre-78 property recently that didn't follow the right techniques. Okay? I'm sorry, no. It's probably coming, but I'm not aware of it. She's talking about NAR. She heard about lead paint rules with commercial. I wasn't at NAR, thank goodness, so I don't know. If it went into law, I'll find out. Yes. So he's not a licensee. He's your kid. She's probably not going to report you to HUD, I'm thinking. So, I think you turn it into a birthday present, a Christmas present. Technically, ask yourself, what am I paying him for? But is he just referring you a sales client or a rental client? And it's 1 to 4 property? Yeah, theoretically, you shouldn't be doing that. He's your kid, though. I mean, you can call it whatever you want. I know you want to do it as a business and deduct it and all that stuff. So, theoretically, no. Yeah, if he has a license, it's okay. Well, it depends on what he's doing. If he's just like fixing the gutters and things like that, we call that a property manager too. But if he's actually, yes, if he's actually taking applications and signing leases, yeah, he needs to have a license in the first place, so it would be okay to do the referral fee. You're absolutely right. But I know some people call the word property manager, they don't necessarily mean licensed activities. That's a good point, though. Yeah. No, if the property is exempt from the smoke alarm and the water heater strapping, it's never the buyer's responsibility to do it. If the seller's exempt, the buyer's exempt. I think I'll make this officially. One more question. Or maybe no more questions. Last question. Right. Let me clarify. Some people think there's something different between a finder fee and a referral fee. They're two words for the same thing. The point I wanted to make is you cannot compensate someone for referring you business, very specifically for referring you a buyer or seller of residential 1 to 4. But if there's a loan involved, do you know you can pay a referral fee for a cash buyer? You can pay a referral fee for anything that's not residential 1 to 4 or for rentals. You just can't compensate someone for a referral of a loan of a buyer who's going, or a seller who's going to buy or sell residential 1 to 4 in a transaction with a loan, but you can thank people, after your former clients. I'll end on this happy note. You're all good realtors and you're all trying to do a good job. This realtor I know, she had a deal 15 years ago. It was a somewhat complicated deal. It went well. It closed escrow. Her client was very happy. Since that time, she was telling me her client has referred to her 250 other clients that have closed escrows. She got 250 commissions based on one good deal. Do you think she gets thank you notes to this client? Yes. Does she give thank you presents to this former? Yes, she does. Is it legal to do that? Absolutely. I just came up with $250 because if it's more than that, HUD may take a look at it. But they don't really look at $250 or less. Okay? See you next year.